Welcome back to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the stories, behind the headlines, the stories that make our community tick. Well, democracy is ticking in New Haven. You might have heard that it's on the ropes in America and some other places in the world, but here in New Haven, we not only support democracy, we have a democracy fund. It's a public financing system that helps people run for mayor, whether or not they're rich and rich people are behind them, get the people more of a voice in government and have them debate so that people get to hear the issues. Heimer runs the Democracy Fund. She's the executive director?
The title is administrator.
Administrator. I think that's executive director, but I'm going to ask you to get so close to the mic. You're almost touching it.
All right.
Heimer, how long have you been running the Democracy Fund?
Since 2014-15. After Ken Krajewski, yep.
And so you've been hanging in there.
I have been.
And we've had a Democracy Fund since 2007, correct?
Yes.
And that's and no other place in Connecticut has a Democracy Fund.
Yes, but not for lack of trying.
Oh, really?
The Democracy Fund was created as part of a pilot program.
Right, where you set up the 3 towns can do it.
Absolutely. And we were just the only ones, New Haven was the only ones that could get it through the finish line at the Board of Alders. So
did Middletown try, or who else tried?
Middletown's looked at it. Bridgeport's looked at it.
Bridgeport. Sorry about that.
Waterbury's looked at it.
Waterbury. Oh, okay. Dead Body Democracy Fund.
It's a challenge wherever you do it.
But why didn't those other communities do it?
They just couldn't figure out how to create their own program. So one of the things that makes our program different is that it's a hybrid model. So some campaign financing programs simply provide a grant to candidates and then limit their additional fundraising, their contributions that they can receive from the public. That is how our statewide program works for state legislators, for the governor. And then the other option is to do matching funds. That's what New York City does. New York City will take your contribution
6-1, right?
And match you 6-1 now. That's correct.
But no grant.
But you do not get a grant, but you then have to keep fundraising in order to continue to get money. So what we have is a hybrid program. We do get a grant. You get $20,000 for qualifying for the fund. And then you also get matching funds for your contributions at a rate of 2-1, up to the first $30 contributed by each individual voter of New Haven.
And is there a cap?
There is a cap. We cap the total campaign expenditures at $390,000.
Have we ever come close to that?
We've passed that amount for private funding.
Who passed that? Tony Hart?
Tony Hart raised about $500,000.
Wow, and she lost.
This was when she won, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the purpose is really to try and take money out of the conversation in local elections, and that is very, very difficult for a lot of towns, and I'm just thrilled that we're able to do it
and just because the Supreme Court won't let us do it right, you can't require that everybody has to run public. Some people can decide, because we've decided that I guess corporations are people and all this other stuff, right? So Buckley Vallejo in 1976 was a Supreme Court decision that said, it's free speech money in elections. So if someone is really rich and just wants to have a endless amount of money, or gives contracts out to really rich people who want to give them a lot of money, they can. Although there are limits in how much they can each give.
There certainly are limits.
But you don't have to run on the public financing Democracy Fund if you don't want to. And in fact,
correct,
people like Tony Hart have chosen not to.
Yes.
But the option is there. So we were talking about parts of it just to start the conversation for people who aren't familiar with this. It's just for the mayor's race.
Correct.
So how does it work if a candidate wants to participate in the Democracy Fund?
So if a candidate is interested, they would firstly read through our candidate contract. In order to participate, you have to agree to a number of parameters, and that's part of why we do it. We want to make sure that you take part in a public debate. We want to make sure that you're keeping appropriate track of your campaign finances and your expenditures, and that you're following all of the rules that the State Elections Enforcement Commission has put into place. We want to make sure your filings are on time. There are a couple of other limitations. You can't accept money from political action committees or groups. You can't accept money from businesses or companies that have contracts with the city.
What about if someone's the president of a company. That
If
has
you're an
contract.
individual and you happen to own a business, that's totally different.
Even if you get a contract for the city.
That's fine. We just want you to be able to disclose that information. We want to, it's
So if
it's
you're
really
running for
about
mayor
clarity.
and you say, I might not be able to have as much money as another person, but I need enough to run.
Right.
I can go to the Democracy Fund and say, if I'll just limit, instead of getting $1,000 from everyone, I'll make it $390.
Right.
And instead of taking money from political actions committees and business interests that want to run the government, I'll just say no.
Right.
And in return, I will get.
You'll get a $20,000 grant, and you'll get a 2-to-1 match on your first $30 of each individual's contributions.
If they're from New Haven,
If
right?
they're registered to vote in New Haven, yeah.
Oh, they have to be registered to vote.
Yes.
Okay, and Allie, I'm going to ask you to stay close to the mic.
No problem.
But up to $390,000, which of course you're not
Yes.
going to get usually
Yes.
for this century. And Allie Heimer runs the Democracy Fund, our public financing outfit. I think you're doing a great job. And so, is this the first time in this mayoral election that both candidates in the general election are going to participate?
Yes. We did have a year where there were 2 out of 3 participating in the general election. That was in 2017 with Sarah Ganong from the Working Families Party. And
But she
Mark
wasn't
Kaka.
running, so that was the problem.
She
She went in the debate, but she refused to talk in the debate.
That was a choice, but it
Because she supported public financing. She just wanted to keep a ballot
Right.
slot.
And
the person who was won with 80% of the vote didn't participate in the program.
right. So that I think was more of a political comment that she wanted to make, and that her team wanted to make, to really focus what their
So this year's the
issues were.
first time, which I think is a mark of your success. Because
Yeah.
in fact, Justin Elliker's the incumbent. He could easily raise 3 times as much money. He's made the calculation that New Haven wants him to run clean. So even though he could run 3 times as much, and even though he kind of is favored to win the election and have more money anyway, he has always calculated that was worth the benefit of participating in the fund because people want our candidates to do that. It's kind of interesting.
Yes, well, I think having the Democracy Fund for so many years now has really showed voters in New Haven how important it is to have transparency. And just the option of participating is a fantastic thing that really says who you are, what you think your own fundraising base is going to be, just straight from the beginning. So,
Yeah, 14 years. And then John Carlson's the Republican, and he's participating. Now, you have to qualify to get that 20,000.
Yes, so
how does one qualify?
He's been able to raise money from over 200 registered New Haven voters. Now, these voters are from any party. Party doesn't necessarily play any role whatsoever unless it's a
And do you need a
primary.
certain amount?
And you need $5,000 in the bank. So you can raise that money from the New Haven voters. You can raise that money from elsewhere. You cap the individual contributions at $390, no matter where that money comes from.
So if those 200 people give you $1 each,
$1 would not be a qualifying contribution. They'd have to give at least 10.
so if that would then get you to 2,000. That
Yes.
How could that other 3,000? Where would that come from?
You can always accept contributions from people in other towns, people who
Okay.
are your relatives in Miami. Whatever.
So I'm getting you in the weeds, but if you follow
Yeah.
the rules, you got at least 200 people in town to register voters. You get at least $5,000. You're in, and both our candidates are in this year.
Correct.
Way to go, Allie. So to participate, they have to agree to come to debate, and you run the debate, and we've had the honor and privilege. I've been so excited every time you let us put together a panel, and we have a great reporter panel. There's so many good
did.
media in town. We had La Voz Hispana, did it with us, Inner City News, New Haven Register, WTNH, WFSME. So we had a good panel. We did a debate this week
Yes, we did.
at Co-op High, and it really, I would argue that in a year like this where people don't feel it's a competitive race, even though we in the media care so much about democracy, we treat it like a real race, and there will be real votes. It's kind of hard to imagine the Republican winning, but that doesn't mean he won't. But I think that debate was sort of the highlight of the campaign. I think that's the time when most people paid attention to a race that otherwise isn't getting a lot of attention. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I would say that, any time that you have an equal platform for 2 people to talk about their ideas,
Yeah.
it really is a boon for the city.
And how'd you feel the debate went?
I felt it went great. I think the candidates were honest and open about their beliefs and their, what's important to them, and they were able to share their own personal histories, their own personal victories.
I thought they also addressed, there was such a wide range of topics from affordable housing to lawn blowers, lawn leaf blowers, to crime, to budgeting, to schools. I felt I really learned where they all stood.
Yeah.
They both stood on all that stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about last night at our Democracy Fund board meeting was, the length of time that folks
Well, I'm
had
hearing a lot about that.
to answer
and
questions.
And the two sides to that, yeah.
And, I would say that, when you only have an hour, you want to know as much as possible about so many things that affect so many people in our city. And it's really hard to do.
Well, I have a strong point of view on this, but I could be wrong. So let's talk about the two sides. So we did it lightning. Right?
Yes.
We said you have 60 seconds to answer and your opponent has 30 seconds. Yes. And twice during the debate, a person who gets the question gets 60 seconds, the other person gets 30 seconds to add in. And then twice in the debate, you're allowed to ask for permission for an extra 30, which they both did twice, and it worked.
Right, to do a rebuttal.
So some people felt that makes them reduce the sound bites. Not enough time to give a complete answer, and it's not thoughtful enough.
Interesting.
I have a strong view in the opposite direction. From having done debates for over 20 years, I actually think the shorter time gets you more substance. Because when it's longer, they fill up the time and bloviate and give campaign speeches rather than answering the question. They were both on their game, as they have been last time we did this, where they felt they really had to get the crucial information in 60 seconds or 30. So I actually felt that I learned more depth about each issue than I would have if they spoke longer, like in some other debates I've seen. Now, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. And as you pointed out, people aren't going to watch for more than an hour without falling asleep. In fact, one person did fall asleep during the debate and then complained that we didn't ask a question that was asked while she was asleep. But that was funny.
That was funny.
But I felt like we were able to do so much ground in an hour, keep everyone but one person awake. So I have my strong point of view, but it doesn't mean I'm right. Some people think let them go for at least a minute and a half.
I mean, I would say, it cuts both ways. I think there isn't just one main thing in New Haven that people are concerned about, right? We have huge questions and huge problems and big asks. And so in order to address that many different diverse topics, you really do need to shorten your answers. And I think one of the other tests of an executive position is being able to explain your position in a brief period of time and make sure that people understand it.
All right. Mind meld. Alyson Heimer, the administrator, which I would call executive director of the New Haven Democracy Fund, our public financing system and debate requiring mechanism for elections. So you had a meeting last night of your board.
Yes, we did. And
you have two people who qualified. What happened last night with the money?
So last night we released the grants and the matching funds for both candidates. John Carlson had qualified in September to get his $20,000 grant. He also qualified for $9,148 in matching
48?
funds. 48. Okay. He submitted over 220 names of New Haven voters who had contributed over $10 and less than $390. And we were pretty excited to see them do that. That's the first time a Republican has ever done that for the Democracy Fund. And the Elliker campaign submitted around 250 names, and they qualified for the $20,000 grant and an additional $11,449.70. So it's actually pretty close in terms of what they've been able to raise. So those are the
disbursements you agreed on last night?
Correct.
And these are the first of the general election campaign. So that's big news. And there will be another, right?
So they can request additional funding as long as they are requesting $3,000 or more. So we, in the primary, we did have a second round of matching funds that was requested. The primary ended up not going through.
So how much did Elliker get, the Democratic candidate, in the primary round?
So he got the $20,000 grant, and then he had two rounds of matching funds. The first was $23,766, and the second was $18,358.
So this came up at the debate.
Yeah.
John Carlson said, "Hey, there was going to be a primary, so of course you had the Democracy Fund, but then the primary didn't happen." Right. Justin Elliker remained in the race without having a primary, and he got by my quick math $62,000. Now he gets to start all over and get a $20,000 grant again and have the same people give him money to qualify for another grant.
Right.
Carlson thought that was unfair. What do you think?
I don't think it's unfair. I mean, it's well within the rules. none of our rules have been broken by doing that. And the Elliker campaign, I want to make very
clear,
has been very
about
compliant.
That. Everyone agrees with that. So the question is, should the rule change?
So we are looking at a lot of different changes for this ordinance. There are some things that are outdated. There are some things that, seem like too high a barrier for entry. Maybe 200 individual New Haven registered voters is too many. Maybe we should decrease it. We want to be able to take a look at the ordinance in full and see where changes should be made.
I know your board
maybe
talked about doing that.
Should be changed, and maybe whether or not you actually have a primary, matters. But both of these candidates, Du Bois, Walton, and Elliker, both raised money in the primary, thinking that they were going to have a real race, and therefore they spent money in the primary thinking that they were going to have a real race. And it wasn't certain until August 11th, which is less than a month out from, about a month out from the election day, that we realized that there wasn't going to actually be. So maybe
it's fair because you actually spend that money in the primary, even if the primary doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So are you going to be looking at this issue or what?
I think we're definitely going to be looking at this issue and a number of others.
I want to ask you about some of those others and there's no right answer, right? You've had this benefit now of seeing for 14 years how it works in New Haven. That's great. And we want to learn from our experience, and the world changes too. Yeah. And we look at what other cities have done. So like as you said, New York, they don't get a grant, but you get a 6-to-1 match.
Right.
San Francisco's also moved to a 6-to-1 match. It used to be 2-to-1.
Right.
Are we moving there, or is there a reason to? What are the pros and cons?
So a lot of it is about money. The Democracy Fund is lucky to have a lot of support right now and for the past couple of years in City Hall. So we did get a capital infusion of $250,000 in the budget this year. That's been very helpful because we've already given out, about half of that in this cycle. But one of the things that we'd like to do is expand the fund to other positions. And so, if we do that, we're going to have to really look at how much money we're giving mayoral candidates, what that match looks like, whether or not it should actually go up, whether or not we should match the first $50. Make it so that these small dollar contributions really matter. Right now we have a minimum contribution of $10. Maybe it should be $5.
So it's going in two directions. Match up to 50 instead of 30 to give more oomph to those contributions, but also lower $10 to $5.
It's all things that we need to look at, and we're gonna see what the fund can afford to do. So right now it has to be
at least a $10 contribution.
Yes.
So at least let the $5 contributions count. Yes. That's all really interesting. Now you talk about other positions. Is there a desire for all their races to have public financing?
I would not say that there's too much of a call for all the races, but other citywide offices, so registrar of voters, city clerk, board of ed.
But do we want registrar of voters? Oh, registrar of voters has never even competed. It's not really. Does anyone ever run for it? Because of this?
There was a primary just last year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah. It is.
So board of ed, you're not really looking at alders because there are 30 of them and it doesn't cost much.
It's also, one of the things that we have considered for the alders, though, is like a clean elections pledge, right? Where we would want people to, say, hey, we're going to, limit our donations. Instead of getting $250 from an individual, we'll self-limit it to $100.
I thought they get $390.
No.
Oh, alders can get $250?
I believe so.
Okay, so limit. So that's an idea that use your position not only to give out money, but to set a standards, like the way you have green standards for buildings.
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to do it, but if you want to have the credit for doing it.
If you want the accreditation, then you need to follow some rules. Don't accept money from political action groups. Don't coordinate with, big business.
That's a really interesting idea. Yeah. Alyson Heimer, we only have a few minutes left. I want to ask you, you've been doing this now for 7 years. Do you like the job?
I love this job.
Why?
I like that I can meet so many different people. I like that it's something that I feel is really important, that gives a voice to people who may not otherwise be able to have their voice be heard. If we are saying that, money talks, it allows $10 contributions to talk as much as a $30 contribution would. And that amplification changes the conversations that we have with candidates, the candidates have about the issues, and that we all look at as a community each year.
So you feel like you're promoting democracy. More voices count and more opinions heard.
Yeah.
And why does that matter to you?
Why does that matter to me? I mean, why does it matter to any, red-blooded American? Paul?
Well, some do and some don't. But have you in your life had a real commitment to political democracy? Is this something you grew up with? I mean, you've been in politics in other roles. I mean, is this something very important to you? Like other people, what's important to them is like shopping or good movies or making great art, Yeah. Why is democracy important to you?
I think it's because a lot of people feel like they don't have the ability to speak about the things that matter to them as much as maybe they should.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's really important for all individuals in our community to have a voice.
And maybe if we're going to have a free society, if we're going to have a just society, if we're going to have a society that works as best as it can, maybe we have to have that. Maybe we need true democracy to make that work.
I think so.
That's why I'm a local reporter. Maybe that's why you're an administrative democracy fund.
Maybe.
All right. Alyson Heimer, what a delight to have you on. Thanks for all the great work you do run Democracy Fund. I'm so proud to be in a city that has it. I'm proud to have an experienced person running it and making it work right. Anything people should know about supporting Democracy Fund?
We have open positions on the board. So if you are anything other than a registered Democrat and you enjoy meetings once a month, we'd be happy to have your application sent to City Hall.
So who do they send it to?
They send it to the mayor's office with a resume and a letter of interest. And you can always attend our meetings as well. Our next one's November 17th at 6 p.m. And we are back in person at City Hall now.
Oh, excellent. And you're on the website, too.
And we are. Yep.
Alyson Heimer, thanks a lot for coming on.
No problem.
Thanks for doing the debate. Thanks to Democracy Fund. Big news. Republican qualifies first time. In our 14 years. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free. Oh, wait, someone had a comment. Let me quickly get that listener in. This is such a great program that allows the playing field to be equal. We need to extend this to every race across the state. Is there a training program for treasurers?
Yes, I do a training program for treasurers individually each time that a campaign even expresses minimal interest. So I will do my 1 hour training, and then I can offer fuller training for anybody who's dealing with any finances on. And that's
Justin Farmer. So Justin Farmer, I hope you get to have it in Hamden, because I know you would take advantage of that too. So once again, thanks for listening to Dateline New Haven. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.